Good evening. It's Sunday, July 12th, and this is Done by Dark. Tonight's wrap is a heavier one, and we start in Washington with the loss of a familiar face in the Senate. Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina has died. He was 71. His office said this morning that he passed after a brief and sudden illness. There were few details, and his family has asked for privacy. For a man who spent nearly a quarter century in public life, the news was abrupt, and it caught Washington off guard. Graham was first elected to the Senate in 2002, after years in the House, and he was running for a fifth term. Over more than 2 decades, he traveled a long arc from a self-styled maverick who prized striking deals across the aisle to one of President Trump's closest allies. Through all of it, one thing held steady. He was among the chamber's most prominent voices on foreign policy and a consistent hawk, especially when it came to Iran. Just on Friday, he'd announced a new round of Russia sanctions alongside the administration. Tonight, tributes are arriving from President Trump and from leaders across the aisle and around the world, remembering a senator who was, above all, hard to ignore. His seat won't stay empty for long. South Carolina's Governor Henry McMaster will name a temporary replacement within days, and the state is already racing toward a special primary in August, with the November election to follow against Democrat Annie Andrews. Names are circulating for the appointment, among them Congresswoman Nancy Mace. With the Senate margin this tight, that one seat could echo well beyond South Carolina. And the issue Graham pressed hardest on kept moving today, in 2 directions at once. The war between the United States and Iran escalated, even as mediators scrambled to pull it back. Overnight, U.S. Central Command carried out another heavy round of strikes. By one count, around 140 targets across Iran, after Iranian attacks on shipping in the Gulf. At the center of it sits the Strait of Hormuz. Iran says it's closed. The United States insists Iran doesn't control it. But in practice, traffic has slowed to a trickle. Iran has been reaching into the Gulf, missiles and drones toward Bahrain, Qatar, and Kuwait. And tonight, President Trump ordered a fresh round of strikes and declared the ceasefire, in his words, over. Across the recent rounds, casualties are counted in the dozens. But not every door is closing. Mediators from Oman, Qatar, and Pakistan spent the day trying to revive negotiations, and U.S. envoys pressed Iran for one thing above all, a pledge to let ships pass safely through Hormuz. As of tonight, there's no breakthrough. But the talking hasn't stopped. It's worth pausing on why one narrow channel can move the whole world. About 1/5 of all the oil the planet trades normally passes through the Strait of Hormuz, a lane just 2 miles wide at its tightest. Choke it, and prices climb everywhere. Today, crude jumped more than 4%, and that pressure eventually reaches the pump. And staying in the Gulf for a moment, Qatar, one of the countries mediating those very talks, is in mourning tonight. Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani, the former emir who turned a small desert peninsula into a global power and launched Al Jazeera, has died at 74. The country has declared 4 days of mourning. A couple of threads closer to home, the biggest housing law in a generation, the one that became law overnight, is now officially in effect. And across the Pacific, Typhoon Bavi is pushing inland over China, trading fierce winds for the slower danger of flooding. And a lighter note to end the news on. The World Cup is down to its final 4. France meets Spain on Tuesday in Texas, and England faces defending champion Argentina on Wednesday in Atlanta, with the final a week from today in New Jersey. Meanwhile, much of the country's midsection is bracing for a heat dome that could push the feels-like temperature toward 115 degrees. So here's what to watch tomorrow. First, the markets. They open into a disrupted strait, and oil is the number to watch. Second, South Carolina, Governor McMaster's pick to fill Graham's seat and the sprint to an August primary. Third, those talks in Oman, whether the diplomacy revives or the strikes resume. And fourth, the road to the World Cup final, beginning with France and Spain on Tuesday. That's the day, done by dark, a heavier one than most. Soften just a little at the end. Hold your people a little closer tonight. Rest if you can, and we'll be right back here tomorrow to wrap whatever comes next. Good night.